The iPhone 13 could be the best iPhone to get in 2023, and here's why. First, this is especially true if you are on a budget and are open to considering used iPhones as well. Second, now that the iPhone 15 is out, to me there isn't much sense in buying the 14 vanilla model. It is a slightly improved version of the 13. It has 6 instead of 4 gigs of RAM, a somewhat brighter display peak brightness, and improved thermal management. An additional $100 is just not worth it in my opinion. On the other hand, with the iPhone 15 on the high end of the spectrum, it leaves you to decide between the older and more worth it models. Here I've got to mention the iPhone 12, which is still a great phone and offers you that core Apple and iOS experience. But for me, the bigger notch, a dimmer display, and the fact that the used 12s come with a battery health of about 85% make me steer away from it in favor of the 13. So what is it about this phone that I really like? Number one, availability. It might not be even that important or even an issue for a lot of you out there, especially in the US, but us elsewhere, getting a solid and well-kept used iPhone might be a bit of a challenge. So I found that in my country, the 13s are in the best condition, aside from the 14s of course, and that compared to the 12s, they have superior battery health. Then the sheer number of 13s available makes it also financially a wiser decision compared to the 14s or even the 12s. An advantage is that a lot of people are moving away from their 13s to the 14s and 15s, meaning that there are more people selling their phones and wanting to get the hottest cookies from Apple, meaning that you have more options to choose from. A symbol. While writing this script for this video, I debated whether to include this, but then I remembered all the times that I've encountered someone in real life who appreciated or admired someone for having an iPhone. I know, it might sound crazy or weird if what you're used to are just iPhones, for example, in the US and Canada, but elsewhere it is a social status symbol. The thing is that iPhones, after duties, customs, and taxes in foreign countries around the world, cost much more than they do in the US. Here's an example. The new iPhone 15, the vanilla 128 gigs of storage version, costs $800 in the US, but in my country, that same iPhone costs the equivalent of $1,200. But where it gets worse is that the average monthly wage in my country is only $680. This just proves the high cost of entering the newer iPhone market and the social status price you're paying for it. Although it is debatable how good Apple's latest iPhones are, how durable and sturdy they are, the 13 is built like a tank. The aluminum edges around still look brand new even after a full year's use. Although I rarely carried it without a case. Still, the pack is made of glass and I wouldn't want to risk shattering it as much as I wouldn't want to risk shattering the front. But I do have to say, comparing it to my Galaxy A73, the iPhone 13 is noticeably heavier, although considerably a smaller device. And that goes back to the materials used, glass and aluminum. However, where Samsung has the edge are the edges. I know that it's a matter of personal preference, but I gotta say that the curved edges on the Samsung make for more comfortable handling of the phone. The camera, however, does stick out enough to make it rattle on a flat surface, so if you find that annoying, there's that. Now, talking about the display, the iPhone 13 has a 6.1-inch display with really punchy colors, and it does get bright enough. There were some situations, however, when I wanted it to be just a bit brighter. It gets really annoying really fast when you're trying to get directions for some places on a bright, hot, sunny day. The viewing angles are good, but keep in mind that the display is only 60 Hz, and if by any chance you're coming from a 120 Hz display, you might notice a small difference. But I can also confirm that Apple's 60 Hz is not the same as 60 Hz on an Android. If I have to put it into words, Apple's 60 Hz is like 90 Hz on an Android. The iPhone 13 is powered by the A15 Bionic chip, the same as on the iPhone 14. And honestly, if you just want to get a phone that performs really well, that is snappy and doesn't take long to open apps, well, almost any newer iPhone will suffice. We're talking even the iPhone 11 onwards. Now, Apple can afford to have even less RAM than some Android phones, and it can also afford to have lower display refresh rates. Yet its phones are still going to fly. And this isn't just a hardware thing, it's also software and app optimization where Apple has the upper hand compared to almost any Android manufacturer. But as you know, the processor isn't only about how snappy the phone is, it's also about battery and heat management. Talking about this phone, there have been times I felt the back to be somewhat warm to the touch, and I remember a few times during this summer, I would use Google Maps in hot weather and the warmth would be noticeable and the battery would deplete faster than normal. So beware of using processor-intensive apps in hot weather on mobile data. Talking about battery drain, generally the 3240 mAh battery is just enough. It lasts through a day's use, although moderate use. I'm not sure about playing games that are really GPU intensive since I don't really game on my phone, but regular usage gives you about 6.5 hours of on-screen time. This makes a relatively small battery capacity quite efficient when combined with the A15 Bionic. There have been rare occasions when the phone surprised me. Once I remember having around 70% of battery for it to totally turn itself off just a few hours later on standby. Coupled with this, there have been a few scenarios in which some bugs made the screen go black, the phone would freeze, and then after a reboot, everything goes back to normal. Now the camera section, it will be purposefully short since I'm planning on making a full-on video review of the camera performance, and you can drop a comment down below on which aspects of the camera you'd like me to test and discuss. But for now, what you've got to know is that of course the 12 megapixel front and back cameras are more than enough for someone even who likes to dabble in photography, like myself. Of course, for all of your more demanding and advanced shots, you might need to at least consider the Pro models, but for social media and everyday camera usage, the iPhone 13 camera is great. Rather than me just talking about it, here are some shots from the 13 until the full camera review. And now let's talk a bit about why you might not want to get the iPhone 13 or any iPhone for that matter. As a lifelong Android user, it was a big transition for me when I got an iPhone. The learning curve was steep and all the gestures that I was used to were not gone, they were just different. iPhones work differently, and if there's not a community of Apple users around you, it might be a little bit weird to be the one with an iPhone, an iMessage, and so on. Further, you might not even be able to utilize an an iPhone to its full potential in that kind of a setting. Also, the default apps that I was used to on my Samsung are also simply different from the ones provided by Apple. Going through the gallery, for example, and just trying to delete some photos was a little bit of a burden to me. I just couldn't get myself around the app. Another thing that I noticed with this particular model were the speakers. Compared to my Samsung, which has double firing speakers, the single bottom speaker on the iPhone doesn't sound that good. It was underwhelming, but then again, body form factor is smaller and it makes sense. Lastly, we all know at this point that Apple made their switch from Lightning to USB-C port, but since the 13 is still a Lightning port type of phone, it did make me have to carry an additional cable around, which is a little bit of a hassle when you have to think about it. But overall, the iPhone 13 provides a stable and smooth experience in 2023 and surely for a few years to come. It has all you might need for fast performance, great looking photos and videos, as well as design and durability. If you are a small phone lover, you're going to love this one especially. The solid build and quality of materials used make this phone a pleasure to hold and operate. What's also good is the availability of accessories from phone cases to chargers that will complete your iPhone experience. Finally, I'd like to give this phone a 9 out of 10, and if you want to get it, I believe that you won't be disappointed. Well, I'm not. Right, so that's been it for this time from me. Drop a comment down below if you liked the video, and of course, like and subscribe. See you next time. Bye.